Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today on this Thursday, December 2nd. My name is Christine Savaggio, joined today by Rina Patel from Learn Upon LMS. We are covering all types of time zones this morning, and glad to have everybody with us. So just to kind of kick off, our webinar today is going to be around tips and tricks of onboarding and optimizing lean data. And so really what our focus is we'd love for those that maybe you are talking about lean data or a tool like lean data, how do you go back to your organization and get that conversation started with your stakeholders? Or maybe you do have a lean data as a tool in your tech stack, and we'd really like to present some ideas of how to scale that as your organization continues to grow. Before we hop into the meat of our discussion today, I do want to add a little bit of a disclaimer that I nor Rina work for LeanData. And so really what the focus of our content today is going to be around like our own personal experience with the tool. Rina specifically on learning and implementing at Learn Upon. And then from my side, sitting on like the consulting side of it and working with our clients on how do we think about like, here you are today, but what about the future? So if you guys have any questions about like pricing or product development or whatnot, we will not be able to answer it. We can definitely point you in the right direction to get your questions answered, but do want to call that out. And if you guys have any questions while we're chatting, please add it to the question Q&A section. Lindsay will be helping us moderate, and we will go through those as we talk. Okay. So basically our agenda today, it's a little, it's pretty much these bullet points that are on here. So Rina and I will do a quick introduction of ourselves. Then we'll have Rina kind of jump into lean data and like how they got started with that tool, procuring it, thinking about it, getting buy-in, you name it, from the Learn Upon side. I'll jump back and we'll kind of talk through thinking about lean data from beyond just the lead object. And then we'll go back to Rina and talk about Learn Upon's like current state and some ideas for their future state. And then we'll open it up for some live Q&A. So like I said, if you have questions, submit them. We'll get to it a little bit later. Okay, Rina, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone. And thanks Christine for introducing me. So my name is Rina Patel. I'm the Digital Demand Marketing Manager at Learn Upon LMS. Primarily my focus there is really focusing on the direction and the performance of all the paid digital channels alongside with the marketing operations side of things. And yeah, so I'm currently resided in Dublin, Ireland. Been here for about a year now, but I don't have an accent, as you can probably tell, because previously I was based out of Toronto, Ontario. I'll pass it over back to you, Christine.
Awesome. And huge thank you, Rina, to you for participating today. Really appreciate you taking the time. For those of you that I have not met that are joining us, my name is Christine Savaggio. I am based out of Charlotte, and I'm a manager here of marketing ops with Etumos. Have actually worked with Rina and Learn Upon in the past from the client agency side. Basically, anything marketing ops, sales ops, you name it. I love it. Let's chat about it. And really excited to have our conversation today around lean data. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Rina and let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much. So we implemented lean data. It's been about 3 months since we've gone live. So I'm excited to just sit down with you guys and just share kind of our story, why we decided to bring on a tool like lean data and how I went about getting buy-in, and then also kind of how we went about going through the implementation process. So if you want to swap over to the next slide there. So primarily it started with our challenges. So our challenges, we bucketed into 3 categories there. And the main ones was we had a manual lead routing process, which then led to some data hygiene and reporting issues that we struggled with. And then there's that lack of visibility with leads and contacts. So I'll dive a little bit deeper into each one of those and what I mean. So going with the first one, manual lead routing process. So Primarily, we didn't have a tool in place prior to LeanData to really help route our leads. So were doing a very manual process there where on a daily basis, our biz dev team would go and take a look at our MQLs from our CRM, which we use Salesforce. They would extract those MQLs, put them onto a spreadsheet, then assign them to which BDRs are going to be working on them. Then the BDRs would then take up the lead, go into Salesforce and continue working on them. And as we, increase the amount of MQLs that are coming in, it really made it difficult to manage. Now, when you're asking somebody to manually update statuses or update ownership, sometimes doesn't always happen, right? There's always things that drop in that way. So we found it very difficult to report on progress of our conversion rate. So, if there's an MQL comes in, how many of those actually went over to sales accepted? How many of those maybe went back to recycling? We just struggled with getting a clear view on that. And then finally, the lack of visibility in leads and contacts. So in Salesforce, it is very difficult to pull one single report on leads and contacts. And when I mean it's difficult, I have not found a way to do it. So that just meant that we had lack of visibility. Our account executives, they lacked the visibility in terms of any new leads that were coming into their accounts that were easy to view. Same thing with customer success. If we had a new customer come in, a new lead come in from a customer account, they just weren't easily able to view who's coming in, who's interacting from their customer accounts. So those were our core 3 challenges that we really faced that led us to think that, we do need a lead routing and a matching tool. So if we go on to the next slide there, so based on that, our decision was to choose LeanData. So a couple of reasons why we decided to go with that. One being the automated lead routing. So for us, we're really looking for a simple to use round robin structure, and also the ability to have multiple round robins. And so we can, tag team certain amount of reps into different round robins and not worry about just having one. Then we have territory assignment. So with the territory assignments in LeanData, what that did, it gave us the ability to then simplify our lead management process. Also with the territory assignments, it gives us that option to scale as our organization grows as well. So as your sales cycle gets more complex, the territory assignment will really help kind of deal with that issue. Then you have lead to account matching. So lead to account matching is primarily giving us that holistic view of the account, bringing both leads and contacts together. And then you have your visual flow builder. So for me, I'm a big fan of the visual flow builder. It's like a whiteboard where you can drag and drop your decision nodes onto that. And then you can start building out what that flow from top to bottom looks like. For me, I found that it was easy to build, being able to visualize the process, and then also easy to kind of explain it to somebody else that may not be that close to it. They also have really clear audit logs, which makes it easy to determine those breadcrumbs for when you're troubleshooting any lead. And then there's support documentation. I found that their support documentation were actually organized by topics that related to what I was looking for. And they're also searchable through Google. So, just have a topic in mind, search that with Google plus LeanData, and I was able to pretty much find what I was looking for. So all of those elements drove me to want to go with LeanData. And then once we kind of decided that we wanted to go with LeanData, the next step for us was getting that buy-in. So there's 3 teams that we approached to get that internal buy-in. One being a business development team, then our sales team, and then our finance team. So as I was coming up with a conversation in terms of how to actually approach them, I really focused my pitch around what matters most to them. So going back to the business development team, it's primarily giving them back time in their day. So versus having to export leads and manually need to plug them in, we're now going to be able to automate that process, and we're going to be able to evenly distribute those leads amongst the team. And then also the fact of sending those alert emails. So as a new BDR gets assigned a MQL, we wanted to be able to send them that alert email. So now they're informed, but then also we know the teams get busy. So they may have missed that first one, or they may have forgotten about it because they were busy doing something else. We have that reminder email there. So now they can, that reminder, you have an MQL that's waiting for you, be sure to follow up with them. So those were kind of the three core areas that we focused on when we chatted with our biz dev team. On the sales team, though, we pivoted the conversation slightly and we focused more on their accounts. So these are accounts that they're working on, and being able to provide them that holistic view of both leads and contacts that are associating with your account, all on the account view itself. And then also those notifications. So with the matched lead criteria, we're now able to set up the notification is, let's say that you're working an account, a new lead is created because maybe they registered for a webinar or they downloaded a piece of content. We want the AE to be informed that that's what happened, right? So then now, without having to automatically convert the lead, we'll just send them a notification there. And then with finance, we pivoted our conversation there to really focus on the cost and the time. So really focusing on the time and cost savings for the internal staff. So the amount of time it takes for the BDR leader to export those leads, we can automate that process, which means you're saving money right then and there. And then also the impact on pipeline. So now that we'll be able to follow up with these MQLs faster, that's going to help with the call connects and impact pipeline at the end of the day as well. And then we looked at the tool as a tool that's going to help scale and grow with us. So that was something that was really important for us to share as well. So those are the three areas that we focused on when talking to these teams.
Rena, a couple of questions here on what you've chatted about. So specifically about the internal buy-in. Can you walk our group through today kind of what that timeline looked like? How long until you brought up I guess not even LeanData as a tool, right? But like we need lead routing optimization help. Yeah. And what that looked like, how you approached that conversation and what that length of time was to like procuring the tool itself and starting to do the implementation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were lucky enough to have we were lucky enough in the sense where the challenges that we brought to the table were challenges that all these teams were facing. So when we were talking about them, they were close to them. They were like, yes, I do spend too much time, those types of like, yes, I would like to get a full view of my account. So with that, to get that internal buy-in didn't actually take us long as that didn't take us that long, but it was mainly because we were living with these challenges for so long, right? So we were lucky in that sense. And then in terms of, once we got that internal buy-in, having these meetings, I would say it took us maybe about, I would say 3 to 4 weeks to just kind of have those meetings, make sure everybody was on board with it, of that, and get the contracts and everything sorted.
Awesome. And then I guess a follow-up question to that, as part of the discussions that you had, did you and the three groups you kind of outlined here agree on, okay, if we spend the money and, it's a soft and a hard cost, right? Like time and cost to purchase this, what does success look like? So in 6 months from now, we're going to say this is a successful endeavor because of X, Y, and Z. Like, how did you approach that kind of ROI?
So the main way we're tracking the ROI on this is going to be through the call connects and the opportunity creation at the end of the day. So it's been a while now since we've gotten this set up, but we worked with the Etumos team actually on setting up our life cycle stages. And with that, with setting up your life cycle stages and getting your MQL, your SAL, sales accepted leads, and your SEL, sales engaged leads and opportunities, all sorted where when a lead goes into one stage to another, the date and time is stamped. So with the date and time being stamped, we're now able to then extract that data, determine how many minutes it takes from one stage to the other, and now we can start grouping those minutes. So now we can say within 1 to 30 minutes, you have a certain percentage of those that will actually be called connects and being engaged leads, versus maybe following up with that between 31 to an hour. Right. So now that we can have that data there, when it comes to 6 months from now, we're looking at it, we can now go revisit that data and see, well, did we improve our response time? And because of that, did we improve our call connects?
Great. Okay, I have a few extra questions, but I think we'll get into those when we get into some of your slides a little bit later on. So I think I'm going to shift gears here a little bit and jump into kind of, Rena kind of walked us through. LearnUpon didn't have LeanData, but they recognized challenges they were having, right? And LeanData as a tool kind of helped solve that. So what I'd like to kind of talk about is beyond just lead routing, right? How does an implementation maturity evolve? Or what are some things to think about from a scaling perspective outside of just like routing a record? And I want to say for our audience, it was purposeful that Rena and I did not include in this slide deck here what LeanData is, because to me, and I think Rena would agree here, it's more than just saying like we're going to route a lead to a BDR, SDR, you name it, sales rep, whatever it is in your organization. It's really dependent on kind of adding their features into their flow builders to help support your organization to meet your challenges. So there's a lot of plug and play implementation methods, right? Challenges observed, you name it. But excuse me, for our conversation right now, I just wanted to touch on kind of like a crawl, walk, run scenario. So thinking about LeanData from, we got this tool, we paid for it, now we need to use it. I would really challenge you to think about from a crawl scenario, maybe your org works out of like the lead and contact object only. And that's what we could start with, right? Like just a single object, single layer logic, not very complex. And, the goal is like our sales reps are set up in an environment where based off a country value, I need to route to them, when X, Y, and Z happens. That's a pretty straightforward layer of logic to build into the flow builder in LeanData based off of one value set, right? One field set, one object. That would allow you to kind of get your hands wet, right? Like feel out the flow builder, understand how nodes work, understand what it takes to, I realized that, actually I need to prioritize this node over that node, kind of just get your arms around the tool itself. Once you've kind of mastered that layer, moving into the walk side is really where we're talking about like, okay, we had all these new records, new leads created. I want to take the burden off my sales team and do an auto conversion into accounts that are matched, right? Or to a specific rep. I mean, you name it on what that logic looks like, but this is where we're really starting to get into, like a lead to an auto conversion into contact, and then the contact flow builder, which has its own set of priorities and nodes and decisions that are taking place. Introduction of multi-layer logic here. And what I mean by this is like, okay, so yeah, their country may be the United States, right? But what is their relationship to your organization? What type of record is it? Was it coming from a special campaign that you guys are running and now have a special follow-up process that's happening, right? Like the value here is really the ability to be flexible with what's going on in your organization. And then the account team support. Like this is probably one of my most favorite things about the tool, which is really, yeah, your accounts are probably owned by somebody. But let's say we have a new person identified and added into that account, right? And then let's say an op happens to be opened against that contact. There may be a different person on your account team that's responsible for reaching out to that type of contact on that account. LeanData will allow you to pretty much build into your decision and say like, okay, check this, check this, check this, assigned to this person on my account team. And it's kind of what Rena said earlier, which is like now you're taking the manual process of account owner A and reassigning to the person on their account team and saying, okay, now you go follow up with this. It's all automated and cutting down on that time. And then territory considerations and location. Let's be real. You like everyone that's on this call today is all over the world. Literally, Rena's in Dublin. I'm sitting in San Francisco. Everybody's in between. People are not working the same hours every day. Every countries have different holidays, right, that are observed depending on what's happening in their calendar year. And LeanData was built for that. It recognizes that not every person is the same. And so your working hours and your time off and your holiday schedule and whatnot is something that can be recognized here. And therefore it allows you not to send a bunch of people for follow-up to a team that may be out of office for a week, as an example. And then from a run scenario is basically all the things to the left that we just chatted about. And then again, one of my more favorite things to build into the logic is like an SLA infraction management. So you're doing all the legwork on the marketing side, sending qualified records over, talking to your customers, your product users, you name it. And your sales team is having to fumble through in the interface on the Salesforce side and is unsure how to see who to follow up with and what do I do with them and you name it. Built on top of like your notifications is also an SLA infraction management idea, which is basically if nothing has happened in a certain amount of time, like a time-based node, then do X, Y, and Z. And this allows for you to say like, hey, sales rep, I haven't seen anything. Please go in here and update this. If nothing else continues to happen, escalation can take place. And again, this is all automated. So you can basically build it in a way to support your SLA processes and not sit and spend 8 hours of your week looking at a report to try to figure out like, where's the breakdown in my process, right? Like what's happening? And then there's the integration with other processes for triggered updates and routing. And basically that's a fancy way of saying LeanData has like an ecosystem of tools that it integrates with. So again, the tool itself by nature, yes, routing, decisions, things of that nature. But maybe you want to integrate, like I said, to your Slack environment because you want to send into a BDR channel when things happen, right? Or there's like the SalesLoft integration, and you can do some cadence management. It's really not just LeanData by itself, but LeanData sitting and integrating into your MarTech stack, and then leveraging those, relationships between those integrations. Okay, so we talked about kind of an implementation roadmap. Again, that roadmap is going to look different for every org depending on what they're trying to use the tool for. But the 4 points that are on the screen right now is basically, okay, and if you were in either one of those categories as far as your implementation, here's some things for you to think about as like an owner, an admin of the tool that will set it up for success. So decision priority. Much like everything else, what should happen first before everything falls down in the flow builder, right? So if we think about LeanData, there's like almost like this backbone and all these nodes that are sitting there. You can have decision, if this, send over here, right? If not, then progress to the next one. I'm a big advocate for let's get all the crap off the top, right? So really maybe your flow builder is built in an upside down manner where like disqualified records, get them off the decision tree early. Is it a partner record? Send that over to your partner network, right? Like next down are these high value types of customers, or they match to an account. As basically what we're trying to say is get all of your priority records out of the flow builder decision nodes first. So as it continues down, then your routing is not trying to route thousands or whatever number of records and then decide what type they are. You've done that legwork up front, and then your decision down below about routing is based off of those different data parameters, such as like region, right? Or company name, or whatever it is for your organization. That'll just help cut down on some of those errors that could happen. Naming conventions. This is a big one that I'm not sure everybody follows, but I do think it's helpful, which is a naming convention for your organization that let's be real, nobody stays everywhere forever. And there are going to be decisions that basically impact your build, where whatever it is today, in a month, you may make a change in your, flow builder itself with what's happening. Translate that into a document that's shared between your team. And what I mean by that is maybe your naming convention starts with like the object letter, right? Like L for lead. We know we're operating in the lead object, separated by a period, and then like a numeric value of 1. This, and then like another period, and then let's say like a U because we're updating a field value, and then another period and a simple, term that outlines exactly what's being updated. By doing that, you've standardized your naming convention across your org. Anyone who comes in can easily see, okay, I'm in the lead object. This is the first decision or first node, right? That's in my flow builder. Okay, we're updating something here, and it could be country, simple update. Then translate that into a shared document that has a change log on it, because I guarantee you in 6 months, somebody's going to be like, oh my gosh, why did we take records from this very like specific campaign and decide to route them to our APAC team? I'm just making this up. If you have it written down as to why you made changes in your decisions and your priorities, it's easy to answer your questions, and it's easier to fix if there's some kind of issue going on with your routing. Make a note and then say, we actually updated this, add that date. You'll save yourself a lot of time. Custom routing fields. This is a really cool implementation method that I've seen different customers use. We all make mistakes. Things are going to break down. Maybe the tool blacks out and doesn't work for a hot minute. But I think if you implement fields that basically, and you can name it whatever you want. I've seen some that are like trigger LeanData or, pass through LeanData, whatever that is. Let's say for some reason your data enrichment tool by error updated 100 records with Canada instead of United States as the country. You go back and you update that then to United States instead of Canada. By building in a trigger field into your flow builders, you can also update that Boolean to say true, which will then kick off your routing process and essentially add them to the top of that flow builder again, and then start that like Plinko style all the way down, seeing like what decision do they need to fall into, and then route. Prior to having this scalable method for essentially reassignment or data hygiene updates, you name it, like whatever you want, you would have to go into the tool itself and be like, okay, of all these people, right, who are the current owners, and then let me manually reassign them. And then you have to communicate it out. It's just this whole thing. So if you think ahead, and even on the flip side here, maybe it says do not route through LeanData, because maybe there's certain records that once they're owned by certain people in your team should never be eligible for routing again, right? Like, I think if you think beyond my general population of records and what should happen, but what are my one-off scenarios where I may need to force an update, but also have a global exclusion, build that in to your strategy. Record ownership. This is another one that I've seen individual or like companies. I just want to challenge you guys to think about about routing like beyond the idea of leads. And what I mean here is like, what should happen for a lead that's auto-converted into an account that is a customer? What should happen if it's a lead that's auto-converted into an account that was a previous customer? What happens if upsells are generated through new ops on a contact role that is, the main buyer of your buying committee on certain accounts? Like, just I like the idea that the tool, yes, can help facilitate that, but it also almost forces the conversation where for you to go into your org and say, this is the type of data that we have. These are our customer relationships. This is our prospect relationship. Who owns what in our organization? And then build and architect the systems to support that. Okay. And again, I don't know if there's any questions on any of that, feel free to ask, but I wanted to definitely include that because we've had some interesting projects with some of our customers and just talking in like the MOPS world about how people are using the tool. And so I'm going to pass it over to Rena here and kind of talk about the implementation of the current and future state.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. So going back to kind of once we brought on LeanData, the next step was to primarily learn the tool. Never really been an admin of the tool, so that was step number one. So I went over to their customer university, and it was actually probably one of the key drivers for me in terms of learning their tool. Once we became a customer, we got direct access to all their courses, and the courses were actually, their course modules are very specific to each of the individual topics. Therefore, as you're kind of thinking through things, it was easy for you to kind of find a topic that you wanted to focus on and then go ahead and take that class or course. Also, they had the bite-sized consumable content with a nice mix of videos and PDFs. I personally am a visual learner. So I like to see a video that shows me exactly what I need to do, and then I can follow it within my instance. And for me, it helped me kind of just learn that much quicker. Again, I go back to the support docs. The support docs there, I find to be quite helpful, and they're fairly detailed as well. And then, of course, they do have a certification that they offer as part of their customer university as well, in which, I personally, personally for me, it was like a nice accomplishment to get that done. So that was, I recommend doing that if you do get a chance to. And then moving over to the next slide there, once I got onboarded with LeanData, there we go, sorry. Once we got onboarded with LeanData, we started to do our implementation. So when it came to our implementation, we did take a very similar approach to what Christine had mentioned in terms of the crawl, walk, and run approach. And we focused on the lead to account matching, automated assignment rules, and service level agreements. So those are the three key areas we wanted to focus on. So when it came to the lead to account matching, what we did with there is updated the page layout. So within Salesforce, on the lead, contact, and account level, we updated the page layout. So now we have the LeanData data that comes through now visible for all of the teams to view. We also set up our decision nodes in order to merge our duplicates. So both for contacts and leads, they have the ability to merge the two together. And then we set up notifications. So for our account executives, as I mentioned earlier, if there's a new lead that comes in from a new account, we wanted to ensure that the AE was alerted and that they knew everything that was going on with their account. The one thing that we decided not to do at our initial implementation is the automatic conversion from a lead to a contact. Reason why we chose not to do that is we really just wanted to see the data stamping. We wanted to ensure that the lead that would be matching to that account, that it was matching to the correct account. So that's why we chose to just hold off on that, at least for now. Let's get just the key areas up and going. The next one is the automating the assignment rules there. So we focused on just a portion of our MQLs for our initial launch. And we use the decision nodes and our MQL type. So every time we get an MQL, there's a certain type that's associated to that. Now, by focusing on just the small amount of MQLs, or the certain amount of MQLs, we were able to then determine, okay, yes, this process is working. We're going to continue to get that buy-in from the BDRs to ensure, they're okay with this new process as well. With that, we launched with one round robin pool with all of our biz dev members in there, and we set up their working hours. So that's primarily what we started with our implementation on LeanData. And then we decided to go with our SLAs, our service level agreements. So using the time-based and the hold until nodes, we set up our SLAs. So when the alert email goes down, we're waiting a certain amount of time, and then we're checking to see, well, has that particular MQL been worked on? Has the status been changed? Has there been any activities placed? And if it's not, we're going to send that friendly reminder. Let's wait another some odd time. Let's get those checks in place. Let's then check again, has anybody been working on it? If not, then we're sending them that final reminder. At that point, we'll also seeing the management on that as well. And then we're going to wait another duration of time. And then still, if there's no action, they lose the MQL and we push it to somebody else. So that's what we initially launched with. And then if we go into the next slide here, primarily, what are we thinking about doing next? So there's 3 areas that we're looking at. We want to expand our assignment rules. We want to bring in all of our different types of MQLs. The nice thing about breaking up your MQLs with types is that when you're including SLAs, then your SLAs can be different depending on what the MQL type is. And then also your round robin pools and everything can also be different dependent on what your MQL type is as well. We also want to introduce regional territory assignments. So as Christine said, everybody's working everywhere right now. So it's hard to have, somebody working, at least here, working from like 9 to 9 p.m., right? Like it's just, you need to set up those regional territories there. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. Then we want to look at the multi-layer logic there. So similar to, again, what Christine said, starting at the top, and just kind of removing some of those people before it gets to the bottom. So for example, we get a new lead comes in, maybe they're attached to a partner account, or maybe they're attached to an existing account in which the AE is currently working, right? So we want to make sure that we go through those layers, we go through that process and who should be assigned to what, and then start kicking them out, I guess you can say, out of the flow. And then again, expanding to other teams. So by adding that advanced layer logic, we'll be able to expand to other teams. How do we bring in the CS team on this? How do we bring in the sales team on this? So it's really having those discussions with them to determine what matters most to them and then to build out those flows. So that's kind of what we have in the next steps. Quite a few different things. So it's probably going to be executed on a few different iterations, but that's where my mind is going right now.
Awesome. And before we open it up to any questions anybody has, a couple of things that I was thinking in my head as you were talking, Rena, is like, obviously as the consultant, we love to ask why, right? Or, like in this instance, from your implementation side, is there anything you kind of would have done different in terms of learning the tool, right? Or implementing it, or just things you learned and wish you would have known and would have done differently next time?
I think the number one thing would be the naming conventions that we did not do, and the version control. I think that's an amazing idea, and I wish I did do that. So something I'm going to have to figure out a way to put that into our process. But I think doing that from the get-go would really have helped, because obviously when you're setting these things up, there are a couple of different versions that you do within the first week or 2 of launching, when you find these small little things that need to be updated. So that would definitely be one thing. The other thing is, one thing that we did do as we were building this, and which I would recommend, is be transparent to the different teams. That's one of the things that I did this time around, and I found that it was really helpful, especially with the business development teams. We're partners in this, right? So, I'm from the marketing team, they're from the biz dev team. We are definitely partners with this. So we want to be able to have those conversations with them. I'd meet with them on a weekly basis and we talk through the flows. I would open up the curtains and go into the back end. This way they understood how everything worked. And as their staff would ask them a question, at least they have some answers to provide as well. And then it just kind of opened up the conversations as well, in terms of when we start to brainstorm new ideas, what we want to have next, they already have an idea of what the tool can do as well. So that, I think that I would recommend that if you do get a chance, do that, be transparent with your, your BDRs or your other teams, and just bring them into the loop.
Awesome. And I think that leads me, to another question, which is, I don't think this question will ever go away anytime soon, but basically, and learn upon in your organization, who owns LeanData? Like what I mean by that is like, who's responsible for maintaining it, adminning it, making sure it's thought about when decisions are made, whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because it honestly does change dependent on which organization you work at, right? So it really does change. But at Learn Upon, the LeanData is actually under marketing. So it's under the marketing team, and myself, I admin the tool, being kind of the marketing ops hat, as wearing the marketing apps hat as well. But I work really closely with our biz dev team. So our biz dev leader, they are responsible for updating the schedules and the vacations. So anything to do with their team, that's their realm. So they have access, they go into the tool and they will update whoever's on holidays, whoever's on vacation, if schedules need to be changed and so forth. But in terms of the overall flow and making adjustments to that and also leading that strategy comes from the marketing department.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen some different things and, even IT sometimes gets involved. So was just curious how you guys were approaching it. So yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, I want to make sure we leave some time if there are any questions from our audience. So I think I'll open it up right now. And, anyone that's with us still, I know schedules are crazy, but do you guys have any questions for either myself or Rena on kind of what we chatted about today? There has to be like something. There's all kinds of things that we can do with LeanData.
Yeah, there's lots that you can do, and it really just you need to have those conversations with the teams to determine kind of the flows and everything.
Okay, so we have a question here from Jesse. I might have missed it, but how long from contract signature to go live with routing? Yeah, great question. Sorry, guys, there's a ambulance or something driving by. Yeah, Jesse, I'll let Rena kind of talk about this. We touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but yeah, just to maybe kind of go through that Rena, about your onboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. So it took us about, I would say about 8 weeks to go live. So once we were talking about going into the contract, we started thinking about what those flows are going to be like. Then after that, we spent about 2 weeks just trying to finalize and conducting those interviews, understanding processes and everything like that. And then we started our build. So we worked with the onboarding specialist there and helped kind of us build everything out. We built it out in Sandbox. That took about 2 weeks, including all the testing. And then from there, about another 2 weeks to build it in production. So altogether, it took about 8 weeks.
And that's actually a good point about the Sandbox environment, because I have also worked where testing and everything was done from a sandbox because it had to, pass the snuff test, and then everybody had to sign off on it before it got promoted to a production environment. So I definitely think that's a great way to do this and will allow you to truly play in the sandbox and not mess up anything that's in your live system. And, I don't know for everyone that's joining us today, if you guys have LeanData currently, but it's very simple where it's like you build it, you test it, right? And then you essentially publish it. And that's like, you can do all the work, the testing in the background, and then you can promote it into your production environment and essentially launch it at that point. And, Rena talked about this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but the audit logs of LeanData are probably, I think, one of the greatest features because you can go, and because somebody has probably come to you, Rena, and been like, why did I get this record? Or I thought I should have gotten this. Why didn't I get it? And you can go to the leader contact area of the interface and add in the email address, and it'll show you exactly like all the nodes that record passed through and then what happened in each one of those. And it's a great way to try to determine, again, if there's like a breakdown in your process and Rena, I guess, that's a good question for you, which is like, how do you set aside time weekly to be like, let me go check our errors or audit log? Because I've seen some customers where it's like, on top of the custom fields they create, it's actually a field that is like routed incorrectly or something along those lines. And by doing that, it allows them to pull a report weekly and say, oh, these people should have routed to something else and they didn't. Let me go try to figure out what's happening. So do you have anything that,
So
from a
we
cadence?
Yeah, so when we first launched, I was in there daily, just trying to monitor just to make sure everything was going in the right path and the right route. But since it's been live for a while, I would say I do that exercise, I would say on a bi-weekly basis, probably should a little bit more frequent, but it, just with time and everything like that,
Right.
I go with more bi-weekly or then ad hoc when a question comes up.
Awesome. Yeah. I've seen, because depending on how big your database is and whatnot, I mean, that can become a very like time sensitive
Yeah.
project. But yeah, I was just curious. So, um, cool. Well, is there any other questions from anyone about anything we've chatted today? Sure, we'd be happy to answer whatever it is. Rena, I don't know if you have any questions for me or anything in terms of what we chatted about outside of, what we've gone through in our slides.
Yeah, no, not at the current time. Just a lot of some really good tidbits there, though, just in terms of kind of the flows and naming conventions and all that good stuff that you just don't think of at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions from our audience, Rena and I are hanging out in the Mops Pros community. We are on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with us. Again, if you have questions about just, partnering with LeanData, totally reach out to either one of us. We can set you up with an introduction as needed or whatever that may be. But yeah, if not, then I guess we'll give some time back to everybody in their day.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Rena. Really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you guys for joining us. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.